Good afternoon. Oh, okay. Good afternoon. Nice to see everybody. My name is Tracyann Williams. I'm an instructor of literature as well as the director of academic advising in the School of Undergraduate Studies at the New School for Public Engagement. It rolled off the tongue, I know. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Feminine Mystique at 50, a day and a half of programming intended to mark the 50th anniversary of the publication of Betty Friedan's groundbreaking book, The Feminine Mystique. Can I say that you're in for a real treat? Because you are. Hang on to your seats. The symposium covers topics ranging from interior design and feminist art to cooking, blogging, and women's sports, thus showing the continued resonance of Friedan's text. Organizers Claire Potter and Laura Arricchio, who you will eventually hear from and meet, have all but guaranteed that we will be challenged and inspired. In addition to the symposium, you absolutely must see the exhibition connected to it. It is called React, the Feminine Mystique at 50. The exhibition, which is curated by two Parsons alumni, please, I know who you are, so please wave. There. And it also features student work. It considers the feminine mystique through a contemporary and critical lens. It's fabulous. And I'm actually going to go back before it closes. So if I'm going to go twice, you at least should go once. The exhibition will be on view, as it says, in the Arnold and Sheila Aronson Galleries at 66 Fifth Avenue until March 5th. You should definitely go. But on to the matter at hand. I also have the pleasure of introducing a very important documentary, Some American Feminists. And I think the title says a lot, Some American Feminists. It provides a window into the mid-20th century women's liberation agenda through insightful, never boring interviews with Rita Mae Brown, Margo Jefferson, Kate Millett, Lila Karp, Ti-Grace Atkinson, and Betty Friedan herself. We also see archival footage from the 1960s and 70s. Revisiting this film in preparation for my remarks today reveals its timeliness and also something about the current state of affairs for Americans, not just women. But enough of me. I'll be here for another hour or so. We will chat. So I'm going to let the film speak for itself and then return for our discussion. Here we go. Some American Feminists. So I thought in the moments that we have before the next panel that we could have a little conversation about what you saw, but also just your thoughts about resonance. The New York Times has done a lot of different pieces this week regarding the publication of The Feminine Mystique and asking of questions and things, and I'm sure that some of you have seen some of that and have been doing some thinking. So we have some wireless mics, and so if anybody has a comment or a question, I would really love to hear that. But I'm going to ask you to not pontificate as if you are the only human in the world. Trust me, I love all of you, but can't do it. So try to limit what you have to say to like 30 seconds or less.
I just have a question. Where has this film been? Because back when it was made, a lot of us were heavily involved in the women's movement, and I don't remember ever hearing anything about this film at that time.
Interestingly enough, as you saw in the opening credits, the interviews were done in 1976 and 77, and it was produced in Canada and didn't have a US distributor until later in the 70s, so 79, and so it becomes an American, if you will, a product in 1980 by Women Make Movies. Some of you may be familiar with Women Make Movies. It's a long time distributor of movies by and about women. So it's accessible, but you know, as often, and perhaps I shouldn't show my biases here, but when there are certain artifacts that might inform or incite, it's not always readily accessible. But I'll just put that out there. Yeah. But it's out there, and I think that you can definitely buy it online, but you can also access it through libraries. Right here.
Thank you. It was mentioned several times about anger, and I remember I was in Europe and had just returned in the early 70s to the States, and I got on a bus, paid the driver, and he said, "Thank you, honey." And I became filled with rage. I didn't even know where the rage came from. And now, this many years later, people are still calling me honey.
Yeah. Other thoughts, questions, issues, problems?
What really struck me was when Betty Friedan said, the women's movement has changed us. And I thought, you know, it's really seeped into every part of the planet, even where people didn't know anything about what was going on at that time. In some way, shape, or form, it has changed through the way media now travels around the world. That is so exciting, and to see the different shapes it takes, where women in India or in the Arab Spring are saying, you can't touch me like that or talk to me like that, or women in Saudi Arabia are saying, I want to be part of this decision-making process. It's just astounding to me, and I can't wait to see what happens next. I think this is just phenomenal, and it's great to see these artifacts and to try to keep in mind how hard it was to do that.
What's interesting as well about these artifacts is that some of the issues that the women are discussing in this documentary that were occurring in the late 60s are issues that are happening right now, almost as if the words were plucked out of our current media. It's stunning, and it makes you really think about that old tried and true phrase, how history repeats itself. So indeed, like, feminist movements have affected all aspects of our day-to-day lives. And yet, have feminist movements affected all aspects of our day-to-day lives? I'm only putting that out there because the New York Times asked in its opinion page, like, basically, like, what should feminist movement do now? Which reminded me that I'm always asked, why does feminism matter? I'm asked that all over the place, so it's a very striking thing to consider.
A lot of progress has been made in a lot of areas for women, but there's one area where I believe we have gone backwards in our rights, and that's in the right to abortion. And until we have control over our own bodies, then there's no equality really been reached.
In addition, the fact that we are having debates about VAWA, or the Violence Against Women Act, or equal pay for equal rights, we're having similar debates again. More and more and more. Don't you want to talk to each other? I can't imagine you're passive. Please. Where are you?
I just wanted to say I'm really happy that you started the weekend with this film. Because I think what's interesting for myself, I'm Gen X. So when I grew up, I sort of thought, oh, it's all done, you know. And I think there's a Gen X feminism that's emerging, or has been emerging, that I'm very excited about. And I think the piece that struck me very deeply was, I don't even know how to pronounce her name, Kate Millett?
Mm-hmm.
Millett, she's amazing.
She is.
And when she said this thing about the interior effects of feminism, I find that to be really intriguing because of the work that was done of just the external, that it took so long to kind of clear the smoke for us to see what's next. I find it, you know, almost intuitively that that's profound, and the fact that they were picking up on it then. So anyway, thank you.
It's stunning, really, when you think about something that Margo Jefferson said as well, which speaks to your point, that it's possible for me to use all parts of myself and still be political, that this is not just an external journey, that this is something within myself. I don't have to parcel myself out into pieces in order to live my life the way I want to. There were some questions over here.
I think it was the woman back here about the abortion issue. I would say that part of the problem came when the Reagan Revolution came along. And we, in the feminist movement, had a very difficult time trying to convince that next young generation that they needed to keep fighting. So we lost about 10, 15 years because all of this repressive stuff that came along in the next 20 years came during that period. And I would submit that it had to do, and has to do right now, with political institutions, with institutions. If you kept quoting the New York Times today, the dynamic between Anne Marie Slaughter and, what's her name, the Facebook woman. For those of us my age, we went through that. We've had that. And a lot of us said it's the institutions that have to change. And the woman over here, I think it's absolutely right. I think this Gen X generation, this generation that's 15 to 32 or 3, they've taken up the fight. And you see it. You see it in the way the election went. We at last had a battle over reproductive justice issues, finally, in a presidential campaign. We never used to get that. It was always over on the periphery. So I am very encouraged by where we are right now, but was very discouraged, say, 10 years ago.
And I, on the other hand, watch this and feel very overwhelmed. And I think, as you just said before, that you can look at it and see things that they're saying in 1977 that are still the same now. Like when Margot talks about white women being sexual objects and black women being laborers. I get that, you know? And so part of it, if the New York Times is saying, what do feminists want to do next? I don't know, rewind the 8-track, see what we've done, see what worked, see what didn't, and then plan the next wave.
Thanks for mentioning the 8-track. I appreciate that. That would be part of my generation.
I have a question.
Sure. I will not purport to know the answer.
Well, I'm asking the whole audience.
Awesome. Good.
That way we can go 1, 2, 3.
Love it.
Anyway, I would like to know if those who are married or have been married, but I'd like to know someone who's in their 20s or 30s. The other is fine, but I want to know if they, in their lives, if they are like their mothers. I mean, are they like what I see in my brother-in-law's family, is the men still all sit around the table after dinner and the women get up and clean up. And we have slowly changed some of it, but it's still there. So for the young'uns, what happens now?
Actually, last night I was just talking to a friend of mine who is in her late 20s, early 30s. Her husband stays at home and he watches the kid, and she goes to work and she works all day and comes home, and he guilts her. You know, you weren't here all day, and I'm so tired, and I've had to do all this all day. And so she gets home and she does the dishes and she does the laundry and she works until she goes to bed. And she said, you know, it's really hard, and it's hard to talk about it, and it's hard to find ways to do it, and she's going to be working pretty much 20 straight days. And he's like, well, you know, you're working, and now you're working for free, and what about our son, and what about me? And it's very hard for her to find the space to say, well, what about me? Because on some level, I see my mother in her, who came home. She worked a full-time job. She brought in more money than my dad, and she would come home, do the dishes, do the laundry, help us. And it's changing in small ways, but at the same time, it's not changing enough.
Thanks. In response to that, I'm 20, so I'm really young. That's a different opinion.
I know a handful of people in their early to mid to late 20s, and by a handful I mean most people I know, men and women, girls and guys, in college, just out of college, want to just be making enough money so that they can settle down and have kids. And it has nothing to do with gender. I think it's just a people thing, that a lot of people lack motivation to go above and beyond having kids. And just in the people that I know, maybe it's just a generational thing, it doesn't seem like it has all that much to do with gender anymore, because I see this in plenty of men.
Well, I'm obviously in another generation, but I have a 37-year-old daughter, and she and her husband have a wonderful egalitarian marriage. She got an opportunity to work in Europe, and he took a leave of absence and is a full-time stay-at-home father. When we cook dinner, he does the dishes, and he's not the only young man that I see doing this. I think that for a lot of couples, things are very evolved, things are very egalitarian, and look wonderful from my generation's point of view. So I think that young men are moving in a wonderful way.
We have one more comment, please.
Hi, I think we were, a bunch of us have asked, well, what's the next step? I think that New York State, first off, I was very, very proud that this was all featured in New York City, my hometown. But New York State has an opportunity right now to make a huge difference. Governor Cuomo's State of the State really put a stamp on this issue and is actually moving it a lot more forward than it's been in a long time. And I think that all of us here need to go ahead and rally around it, even though we don't have the language yet, just to be involved, to say, yes, women's rights are people's rights, and New York State can take the lead on that. So that could be the jumping, our catapult into the next phase of strengthening women, not just in New York, but for our nation.
Wonderful. It's a lovely place to stop. We're going to stop for now, but it's not over. It's not over. There is more mystique that's feminine waiting for you. So you can get up, go to the bathroom, stretch your legs, whatever you need to do, but please come back. You have just 10 minutes to come back for the next panel, which is going to be amazing. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you so much. Hi, Etty.